Hi everyone, it's Annemiek from the Academy for Soul-Based Coaching, and I'm here with Leslie Ellis today. And Leslie is a spiritual guide. She is a yoga therapist and a certified soul-based coach, and she's also the founder of the Heart Song Yoga Sanctuary.
Right.
Leslie, I'm really happy to be chatting with you again. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. Always fun
Gorgeous.
to get together and chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're having this conversation because Leslie has taken Invoke, Invoke Your Client's Magic, our certified soul-based coaching program. And I'm like, when did you take it, Leslie? Like I said, I think you've been here forever. Like you're part of our family. When did you take the program?
Yeah, well, I'll just say it's a wonderful family to be part of. But
Okay.
also, let's see, 2000. I think I started Invoke in the end of 2018.
Right.
Like November of 2018.
Right.
And then finished the next year and got my certification early in 2020.
Cool. Yes. And so we're doing this series because I'd love to give people an insight as to what actually happens once you finish the program like this, right? We have a lot of conversations about what it's like to be in the program, but then of course, life unfolds further, and it's lovely to see how people integrate it in their own unique ways, and what they find themselves doing with the work that they're taught to do. And so can you take us to that moment just before you started Invoke? Like what was it that drew you to Invoke? What was it that you were hoping to find?
Yeah. If I can have permission to go a little bit further back, I'll just say,
yes.
I ran a yoga studio for a long time, and a couple of years before I joined Invoke, I had closed that studio and moved to a new town. So that was a real transition point for me, where I started looking, okay, what's the next iteration of what Leslie does and what Heart Song Yoga is, and how does that work? I knew I wanted to work more online. And I have been doing private yoga with clients for a long time and a lot of coaching through that. So I felt like doing an actual coach certification would be very helpful, and something that would somehow kind of expand, because I never really, and at that point for sure, I didn't want to just teach people yoga poses. That's not really, I mean, that is part of what yoga is, but for me, yoga is so much bigger than that. And it's a, it's a life practice. I feel like, life can be yoga. And so I was really looking for a soul-based, not a soul-based, I was looking for a coaching program that would fit that model of what I had that I wanted to offer. And that was very challenging. When I looked at the training programs and what was available, there just wasn't anything that really sparked me like, yes, that feels good. Until, of course, and here it is, I found soul-based coaching. And really, I think I got your free holding space handbook, and I was reading that. I was like, yes, this is what I do. I mean, I felt like this is what I do, and here is a person who knows even more about that, and like can help me to expand what I know about that, about holding space and about being present with people in a little different way than as a yoga teacher I was. Whereas, as a yoga teacher, you're telling people what to do while also making invitations for them to feel it themselves. And I just wanted to grow more in that.
Yes, beautiful. And I remember our first conversation. It's so funny.
I do.
It is so funny, kind of looking back at it so many years later. But yeah, it was about guiding the flow for people and being in the flow with them, or being kind of next to them, or offering them the riverbed for that flow, and what that difference was. At least that's what I remember about it.
I remember that too. And that was actually like, that was one of those like transformational moments of my life. Because that flow of the river was a metaphor that I had been using for a very long time in my own life, and like supporting people, and how, you know, we step in at different places in the current, and some currents are fast and some currents are slow and all of that. But what I remember saying to you is something about like, yeah, I feel like when I'm working with people, I can really step into that current with them and be there with them and support them. And you said something like, in your very way. And said, I look at it just a little bit differently than that. And when you said that, I was right away very curious, like, okay. And you said, I look at it a little bit more that as a coach, I'm holding the riverbanks for the person to be in their own flow, that I'm not stepping into the flow with them. And that it really did like light this light bulb up in me, that I got curious about, and trying to understand more about what that meant, and seeing for myself like where that was true. Yeah, like I've been kind of speaking about it or characterizing it in one way, but there was this whole other part that was also true, and that was actually, I could see like the expansiveness, I could feel the expansiveness of that for me as a coach. And I'm not like right in there in the flow too, and kind of leaning back a little bit, how much that might open up for me in as a coach, but also for my client. And then I'll just say, because it's kind of top of mind right now, that has been part of my experience of having gone through Invoke and becoming a coach, is that I feel, and I know you and I've talked about this before, but like, I don't have to work so hard. I don't have to work so hard to help people make the transformations that they want to make, because I don't have to get in there and like muck around and do the work with them. Even though I am right there with them, it's really, it's just kind of supporting them, listening inside more and hearing more of what their own guidance is. I don't have to provide that guidance. And yeah, that's a relief.
Yeah, I can even like, even when you're talking about it now, I can just feel my body respond to the words of like, if we don't have to be in that muck with them, if we don't, if it actually doesn't serve anyone, I can, anyone who's listening, it doesn't serve anyone if we're in the muck with them and doing the work in that way. But there's like such a like being able to lean back while at the same time being so exquisitely present with them, that just gives, I actually, my crown chakra is starting to tingle. But like that is such a powerful, potent container to open up for people.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I think that one of my sort of constant navigations is, I do have a lot of potential guidance and things to offer people, and people often ask for that. But the more I've learned how to sit back a little bit more and not insert that right away, the more I find that people need a lot less of it than I perceived before. And also that what I might offer in that way is much more potent and much more directed towards where they're at in the moment, rather than where I see they could be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And and so it makes it more actionable too.
It's like the image that comes up is like micro dosing.
Yeah.
Like really, like if anything is needed at all, then it's like really tiny bits that go a long way.
But so often it's not needed to, and something will happen in a coaching session that I could never have anticipated, that's how that person would navigate whatever it is that they're doing. The other day I had a woman in a hovercraft taking, bits of a fire that she built one place somewhere else to finish the process. And it was so enrapturing for her. Like, it's not, I love sci-fi, but I never would have thought of that. Like, oh, well, what you need is a hovercraft,
And just in case anyone's watching, we're talking probably about a metaphorical hovercraft, am I right? Yeah, but I hear you. It's like because we work with people's inner metaphor landscapes who are like expressions of their inner knowing, like at a very deep level. There is no two sessions that can ever be the same, right? And so for me as a coach, like there is like zero chance of getting bored with the work, right? Because it's like every time it's like a whole new, well, in a way, a whole new storybook opens up with like twists and turns and like magical, like resolving and healing and growth. And, you get to have dragons and hovercrafts and unicorns and all sorts of things. But in the end, it leads to that change that people want. And that's just, it's such a magnificent.
I love that you say it too, like that, Enemy. I just want to pull that up, that story, the storybook, because it's such a different kind of story than I used to listen to. Not that those stories don't still come up, because they have meaning to people. But what I find is people shift so much more quickly out of that story of this happened and that happened and
and this is why, and this is why, and these are the things.
Why I'm like I am, right. Yeah. So they shift so much more quickly out of that story into seeing a different story of what's possible, even if it feels, like a fantasy, because we also work so much with the body. And I think this is the other place where the soul-based coaching and the yoga for me just feel like such a good fit, because even though we're working in metaphor and imagery and all of that, the process is so embodying and people feel what that metaphor, it's not, like a fantasy story that they're making up, or a daydream. It's really like in the present moment, as a felt experience.
And engaging so many of the neural pathways, right? There's so much of the body is part of this unfolding and this getting to know what happens and how this client can get to a resolution, or how they can clear the blocks that are in the way, or how this client where they even want to get a really clear embodied sense of that of what that is like. That's so true. Beautiful. So when we look back now, Leslie, could you imagine your life without like what soul-based coaching brought you?
Well, I have a very active imagination, so
cool.
Of course I could imagine it like that.
Cool.
And what I see is like the current reality and what I think it might be had I not done this coaching program. I think I can speak to it best in this way. It has been so enriching to my teaching, and it's helped to keep me more engaged and curious about what I've been doing for so long. I've been teaching yoga for almost 25 years. So it's like it's helped that to continue to expand and grow, and it's in a way that I really have loved so much and enjoy. So I think back and it's like, well, sure, I could imagine my life with it, but it might not be this interesting, or for sure I'm not bored with teaching. And I have this other, so I'm teaching yoga still, but it's really contributed so much to even the way that I teach and the way that I teach meditation and what I offer to people, I think, in their own internal explorations. So
And what
I don't
difference?
know if I really answered your question.
Yeah,
But
well, it's all good. Well, what difference do you think it makes for people? Like the changes that you've seen come into your yoga?
I think there's that, gosh, so it could just be such a long answer. I'm trying to bring it in just a little bit. All right, I'll say it like this. So I have always been a teacher that uses metaphor and imagery. I know the power of that on what happens inside, like in our inner experience. And so when I'm teaching one-to-one, what I have found is I'm better at really like patiently waiting and invoking that client's own kind of metaphor, and then we can explore within that. When I'm teaching in a group, I often use imagery, and then it's going to usually come more from me. But what has changed is I might not be quite as descriptive or quite as like just going into my whole way of seeing it, and creating more space for people to really take, because I'm using universal images, right? There's a lot of metaphor and imagery that many of us can connect to, but then creating more space for people to really feel that in their own way. And I think the soul-based coaching really helped me see the value of that and the potency of it. So what happens for the client is that they can like own it more. It's not something that came from me and like, you know, oh, you're brilliant, you helped me, you made me feel blah blah blah. It's more like they have that sense of empowerment and ownership. And I feel that it's kind of like no longer do I need to empower people. I just help them connect to their own feeling of being empowered. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. A really big a man, a woman to that. There's it's such an interesting word, empower, right? It's like if I hold on to the idea that I can empower someone else, it kind of means that I hold power that I can then give to them. Yeah, I can kind of, yeah, exactly. And it's like, but actually the power lives with the other person to begin with. So it's like, and it's an interest. I've always had this weird kind of like, empower, let's look at that word. But also the thinking around it. And so what you're saying is such a big shift in when we're actually able to do that, when we're actually able to help people connect to that sense of how they are power.
Yeah.
And hold that within, whether it's a yoga class or coaching conversation, or in their lives. Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I'd love to ask you something I've never asked you before, and that is, I shared at the beginning that you're also a spiritual guide. So I'd love to hear, is there a relationship between that and the soul-based coaching work that you've been doing and are doing?
Yeah, when I say that as a spiritual guide, you know, I'll be honest it's a little bit of an exploration for me to speak of what I do in that way. But I feel like there is this potential that we all have to letting the words distill a little bit. To really be more internally guided, less externally, like less seeking of answers outside, and more trusting, sensing of that inner guidance. That's something that has always been true for me. And the soul-based coaching, I think, has give them both another tool for supporting people in that way, but also expanded my own view of what that means to be soul connected. And so to me, spiritual is really that. It's like that connection to my own soul, inner guru, wisdom, intuition, all of that. And yes, the relationship is very strong and also not absolutely direct.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Like there's a lot of different threads in the way that the two weave together for me.
Yeah, beautiful. And it's I realize that it's like opening a whole new book or a whole new chapter of a conversation that we might be interesting to explore later. If anyone watching, if you have questions, if you're curious, please reach out to Leslie. Do that anyway if you'd like to work with her, because she's amazing. And it makes a lot of sense to me, and especially in this time as well, where we're seeing that we're having to kind of wean ourselves off of the outside gurus, and really we're all invited to go in and start really becoming consciously connecting to that inner guru, as you put it. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's just to say one more thing, like that difference between the guide and the teacher too, which is a conversation that I'm having with myself right now. So I won't expand on it at this moment, but that shift, like I think there are many powerful guides out in the world for us, but that when we are in the presence of that guide and we feel like we have our own authority and permission to really be true to ourselves, that's an important piece. And I know that one of the things that we're seeing in the whole spiritual world is there are too many teachers and gurus and people who have taken that away from their followers or the people that they set themselves up to support or to help. So yeah,
that's definitely a bigger conversation, and it so resonates with me when you're speaking about that. Yeah, so Leslie, thank you so much for a glimpse into your life. Where can people best find you if they want to know more about what you do, or they want to ask questions about what you shared here?
Yeah, thank you. I do have a website. It's yogaheartsong.com. And people can also find me on Facebook and Instagram, Leslie _@Heartsong. That's probably a good place to go, and then can find all my other stuff from there.
Great. Yeah, we'll make sure that all of these are very close to this video as well. Thank you very much for all of your input, and thanks everyone for watching. Until we meet again. Bye everyone.